Hello everyone, and welcome back to the latest episode of An American in Thailand, airing every Friday. This program is broadcast to you from Ratchamakon, University of Technology, Peranakan, and it will be coming to you in two parts. For the first part, we'll introduce a certain topic about being an American living here in Thailand. We might talk about food, travel, culture, lifestyle, anything like that. We'll then take a break, and in the second part of the program, we will get into more examples, details, or specifics of whatever the topic is we're discussing. All right, let's get to the program. Welcome everyone, my name is Gary Gray, and I am your host for An American in Thailand. I am an American English teacher here at Ratchamakon University of Technology, Peranakan. I've been here for about 9 years, so I get a pretty good feel for what Thailand's all about. Its culture, lifestyle, food, travel, all those sorts of things. And so for today's topic, we're going to be talking about kind of lifestyle, something related to lifestyle. We're going to be talking about the difference in government services. Sounds like a really boring topic, right? But it's actually very interesting. It's very interesting because I want to talk in the second half about which one's better. And I think it's an interesting comparison. First half of the program, we're just kind of go through a list of what some of those differences are between America and Thailand. We'll talk a little bit about why, but I don't want to get into that too much because that may then start to get into which one is better or worse. But we'll talk a little bit about why, just so that you can understand kind of why these things happen, why it's like that. Okay. So I have a list of 8 things here. There's a lot more than that in terms of government services, but we're just going to go with kind of 8 big things here that are different in terms of what the government does or provides. One of these issues is really just something it does. One of them you may not really think of as a service. And actually the last thing on my list isn't really a service at all, but it's related to the services. Okay? All right, so the first item on my list, number 1, is Social Security. We have that both in Thailand and in the US. It goes by the same name. The difference is, in the US, it is a much bigger, more expensive program. So it provides a lot more money to the citizens. For example, an old person here in Thailand, if all the money they get is their Social Security, they cannot survive. It's not very much money. They have to have saved up money throughout their lives, or maybe they have family that supports them or something like that. You can't really survive off of Social Security here in Thailand. In America, well, depending on your lifestyle, it still might be really hard to. But you might be able to. You could. If you have paid off your house, so basically you have a free place to live. If you don't have a car loan or don't have a lot of credit card debt, all of those sorts of things that take money from you every month, you might be able to survive off of Social Security. So it's a lot more money. You get a lot more money in Social Security in America. Now, I told you in the second part of the program, we're going to talk about whether that's good or bad. Obviously, that automatically sounds good, right? But we'll get to that. Personally, I do think that's good, but you might have a different opinion. Okay, something that goes kind of along with Social Security is Medicare, and that's when you get older. That's like medical insurance. That's provided to you sort of for free. There are kind of add-ons to it that you can pay a little more for. But kind of the baseline care is free. And you compare that to here in Thailand, where you don't have that. Although I will say that health insurance in general is cheaper here. But that's not really a government service. Unless you work for the government, so your health insurance is provided by the government. That's kind of like my situation. The university I work for is a government university. Technically, I cannot work for the government university. As a foreigner, I can't work for the government. So I'm contracted by them. But being a contractor still qualifies me for that same group insurance. So I go through government insurance as well here. So you can get government insurance here, but you basically have to work for the government. So essentially we don't even have that here. So in the U.S. they have Medicare. That's for older folks. They also have something called Medicaid for poor people, maybe disabled people. That's a different program. And so far as I know, none of that exists here in Thailand. I could be wrong. I'm sure there's going to be some sort of plan to help out poor people or disabled people. But from what I'm aware of, I've not heard of it. If it does exist here in Thailand, I'm sure it's a smaller program. Those are pretty huge programs back in the U.S. Okay, another difference is that here in Thailand, something the government does, it's not really a service, it's just something they do, is they put a cap on pharmaceutical prices and energy prices. We're seeing that right now with the oil crisis that's going on. As I'm recording this, it's middle of May of 2026, and there's a big oil problem going on because of a war in the Middle East. And what we're seeing in the United States, where they don't have these caps, is gas prices have gone up a lot. Here in Thailand, gas prices have gone up a little bit, but not so much. And that's because the government here puts a cap on drug prices and on energy prices. Another difference is that in the United States, there's more funding for public schools, for basically government-run schools. There's a lot more funding in the United States for those schools. Once again, that's kind of like the Social Security one. You might say, well, that's obviously a good thing, right? Well, I personally think it is, but that money's got to come from somewhere. That's going to be number 8 on my list, which I said isn't really a service or anything they do. It's more something related to these government services. So that money has to come from somewhere. So is it really a good thing? Kind of related. There's better infrastructure in the U.S. I will say it's not much better, honestly, because they've really struggled to get funding to improve infrastructure in the United States. So even though the United States is a more wealthy country than Thailand is, they don't put a lot of money towards that. But I would still say it's a little better. And that includes the 6th thing on my list, which includes the safety standards that might kind of go along with that. I mean, although safety standards apply to a lot of other things as well, food safety, workplace safety, but it may also go into infrastructure. Like, what are the standards for that? For example, the earthquake we had here, where the building fell down here in Bangkok. I'm guessing, I don't know what the end result of the investigation of that was, but I'm guessing that would have never happened in the United States. That earthquake was not strong enough to do that. I mean, it was strong, a lot of shaking going on, but that building probably does not fall down if it was being built in the United States. I'm guessing there was a problem with the standards being used. Now, I should say that if there was, because I know there was some talk about that may not necessarily be on the government per se, because it could be the company that was building it wasn't building it to the standards. The standards might have existed. But even still, in the United States, there's going to be more inspections. They're going to keep track of that more and make sure things are being done up to standard. Okay, another difference, number 7, is the military. The United States spends a lot more on the military and has a much bigger military. I mean, obviously, it needs a bigger military because it's a bigger sized country. But, I mean, even relative to that, it's a much bigger military. And number 8, like I said, this is more something that's related to the services, but it isn't a service or anything that the government really does. and that's that taxes are a lot higher in the U.S. You can see we talked about, Social Security in the U.S., that gets paid out more. They get more school funding, better infrastructure, better safety standards, bigger military. Well, it's got to get paid for somehow. So taxes are a lot higher in the U.S. I can tell you that here in Thailand, my taxes that I pay here are almost nothing. I pay my taxes. My taxes get taken out of my salary every month. I pay taxes, but it's not very much. In the United States, taxes are very high. All right, so those are the 8 differences that I've come up with. So in the second half, we'll discuss which country is better. And you can see why there might be a balance here, right? I mean, sure, this sounds like the U.S. is better with most of these, right? Except maybe the capping of the drug and energy prices here in Thailand. But you got to pay for these things. So the taxes are way higher in America. You keep a lot less of your money. Sure, you make more money in the U.S., but then the government's taking half your money. All right, so in the second half, we'll discuss which one of these is better. Let's take a quick break. Welcome back, everyone. All right, so for today's episode of An American in Thailand, we are talking about the difference in government services between the United States and Thailand. So in the first half, I gave you 8 differences in services provided or things the government does. The 8th one was actually about taxes, which is related to that because that's how you pay for the services. But that's obviously not a service itself. I guess you can say it's something the government does since they're charging you those taxes. But that's not really what I mean. I'm talking about things the government does for the people. And that's not really something they're doing for you. But I wanted to include it on there because it's an important note because that's how you pay for the better services. All right, so let's go through each one of these point by point and discuss which one's better. All right, for Social Security, I'm going to say right off that in this one, the U.S. is better. Why? I mean, yeah, the money is taken out of your salary, so you could say, well, that's a bad thing. However, your employer also contributes some to it, and it gets invested. So there's a return on that money. It's a tiny return. It's not very good. And they do that because they want to make sure it's a low risk so that they don't lose money on the investment. That's the one bad thing about it. So some people in America say it should be privatized. People should be allowed to invest where they want to. Okay, whatever. It is invested. So the amount of money there ends up growing and growing and growing over time. So when you retire, you end up with quite a lot of money. I will give you an example for myself, my own personal self. I've been here 9 years. I can retire in about 7. Now, if you wait later to retire, the amount of money they pay out will increase because they basically figure you're going to be collecting less time because you're going to die. So I can wait longer to retire and collect even more money. But that'll be about 15 years from now. I'm obviously not paying into Social Security in the U.S. while I'm living here. So for 15 years of my life, think about this, for 15 years of my working life, I'm not contributing anything to this. When I retire, and this is if I retire at the youngest possible age, so this is the lowest amount I could possibly get. And I'm using a low number because the number goes up with inflation, and I haven't calculated this number in a few years now. So this is the number from a few years ago. I will be making approximately 55,000 baht every month. Again, very low estimate. Haven't accounted for inflation over the last few years. That's if I retire the very first day I'm eligible to retire. It assumes I put nothing more in Social Security over the next 7 years until I retire. That part probably is true, but still, you can't go lower than nothing. So if anything about that's wrong, I will be contributing even more, which will push that number up. That's $55,000 a month. That's not wealthy. You're not going to get rich making that amount of money here in Thailand. But that's not bad, considering you're not working at all. I don't have to work at all. And the beauty of it is it's just my money. That's my money. The government took it out of my salary, invested it, and then I get it back. A lot of people will talk about, oh, well, in the U.S., about how Social Security is running out of money, blah, 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 we have to have cuts. Well, it is running low on money, but that's because of extra things that they do with the money. Like, for example, disabled people. They get more than they put in because they haven't been able to put much in because they're disabled, so they can't work as much. And so there are these kind of extra pools of money where money gets pulled out of the Social Security system. That's the only reason it's running out of money. The actual amount of money it gives you is almost exactly the amount of money you put in. For people that are at the low end of the scale, they do give you a tiny bit more than you put in. And for the people that are at the highest end of the scale, they give you a tiny bit less than you put in. But it's essentially exactly what you put in plus the interest. All right, so we spend a lot of time on that one because I think that's the biggest one. So Social Security in America, much better. Now Medicare versus the healthcare in Thailand. I'm going to tell you that this one's pretty much, neither one is better. I mean, in some ways, Medicare is better because, again, the baseline is free, but there's so many add-ons to it where you have to pay extra, and healthcare is so much cheaper here in Thailand to begin with, and so is health insurance. If you're on Medicare in America, you're probably paying just as much for your health care than someone who's paying for just normal health insurance here in Thailand. So I'm going to say that that's no better. In some ways, it might actually be worse in America because I'm talking about just the stuff you still have to pay. And meanwhile, while you've been working, since it's something for people who are retired, the whole time you've been working, they've been taking money out for that as well, just like they do with Social Security. They take out less for Medicare, but they still take money out. So that's about even. And if anything, it might be a little better here in Thailand. And this is what I mean. See, you have to kind of think about these things in their entirety because that's something you would think, oh, well, that's going to be better in the U.S. We have a program to take care of old people and their health care. Yeah, we do. It's not that great. And you still have to pay something. And because healthcare is much cheaper here in Thailand, you're probably paying the same amount here anyway. Okay, capping drug and energy prices, which they do here in Thailand. They do not do that in the U.S. That is absolutely better here in Thailand. Absolutely. Because the pharmaceutical companies, that means drug companies, the drug companies and the energy companies in America, their profits are enormous. So you know that's where all of your money is going. Your money is not going for research into the latest drugs. If it was, well, maybe that would be reasonable, right? If that's where your money was going. It's not. I mean, I'm sure some of it is, but a lot of the money is just going into the pockets of rich people. So that's much better here in Thailand. I wish they would do that in the U.S. They never will because a lot of people there believe in capitalism, which I do to some degree. I think that's a good thing to some degree. It helps with innovation. It allows people to make money. If you want to become rich and you're not, if you have a really good idea, it's a lot easier to become rich in America than a lot of other countries, although you better have a really good idea and be willing to work really hard. But you can do it. So I do believe in capitalism to some degree. But an issue like this, for things that are necessities, energy, food, drugs, I don't really have a problem with there being price caps. So I think Thailand is better in that regard. School funding. It's much higher in the U.S. This will get us down to the taxes one that we have as point number 8. I'm just going to tell you right up, this one's better in America. I can tell you, being a teacher here, we have a few of our classrooms here have absolutely no resources whatsoever. I had a classroom I taught in 2 semesters ago, which had no computer, no whiteboard, and no projector. It's like, what do I teach on? What am I supposed to do here? It was crazy. It was crazy. Actually, it started out the semester with a projector in there, and then someone stole the projector. It was nuts. It was nuts. We need better resources here. And I do work at a government university, so it does have to do with government funding and government spending. We need more resources here. The United States is better. It just is. The way they do the school funding there. The way they do the school funding there is not perfect. People in America sometimes talk about institutional racism. That's part of it. The way the schools are funded. Places with a lot of minority population tend to have worse schools. And that's because of racism from 60 years ago. There's no overt racism now. I mean, you have to employ people and hire people, whatever, but it just kind of built into the system. It perpetuates for decades and generations. And so you used to be able to discriminate against those people. And it gets reflected in the school system. And so they're still seeing that now. So that's better in the U.S., but it's not perfect. Better infrastructure in the U.S. We talked about this a little bit in the first part. It's not that much better, so whatever. Better safety standards in the U.S. This is another one where I'm just going to say the U.S. is better. There are bad things that can happen without those safety standards. I mentioned the building that collapsed during the earthquake here in Thailand, here in Bangkok. I can't guarantee that wouldn't have happened in the U.S. I mean, there was some pretty good shaking. Yeah, so maybe. But I think that probably does not happen in the U.S. The shaking was not that strong. You didn't see any other buildings come down. Okay, the military. Here, you can decide. I mean, it's good to have a strong military. I mean, we saw this recently here in Thailand with the fighting with Cambodia. Maybe you want to have a stronger military. I think our military here is stronger than Cambodia's. So if that ever blew up and became worse, I hope not. But if it did, Thailand would probably dominate that anyway. Still, you'd rather be stronger than weaker. The problem with the U.S. is, number one, we spend way too much money on the military there. And this other problem is all that money doesn't necessarily go to the military itself specifically. The work gets contracted out. And as we talked about with pharmacy and energy prices, with the CEOs taking a lot of the money, you get the same thing with these contract companies that are doing the defense. It's why China can spend a lot less than the U.S. does on the military, and yet China seems to be catching up to the U.S. militarily. How is that possible when the U.S. is spending way more than China spends? It's because of that. It's because a lot of the money is just going to profits. So which one is better in terms of military? I would probably say Thailand, but you could go either way on that one. It's nice to be from a country that has a strong military. You feel a little less threatened. Like my time growing up in America, the only thing we ever felt threatened by was like the Cold War with Russia, with nuclear weapons and that type of thing. We weren't afraid of like Canada or Mexico invading us. That wasn't going to happen. So you can pick or choose which one you like there. And then the last point we had was taxes. Again, because of these better services, taxes are a lot higher in the U.S. All right, so overall, which one is better? And that really depends on your priorities. For example, as I said, I think Social Security is unquestionably better in the U.S., but it also means we keep less of our money, right? So if you're not worried about retirement, you're not worried about when you get older, or you have a way that you can invest your money better and you're really good and wise about investing your money, some people aren't. Some people cannot be trusted with their own money. And so it's good to have Social Security. It saves them from themselves in their old age. But because the return on the investment for Social Security is so low, yeah, if you're really good at that, maybe you'd be better off without it. And so you're better off here in the Thai system where you can just keep your money and you can go invest it yourself. So it depends on your perspective and what your priorities are and how you're able to manage your own money. Military issue, we talked about that. That's kind of similar, like it depends on your priorities. I mean, do you want the stronger military? But the stronger military, you're wasting more money because a lot of that money goes to waste in the U.S. military. So which one do you prefer? It depends on your viewpoint, depends on your priorities, depends on your own personal ability to manage your money. Generally, I would say the services are better in America, but I will say that there were several here that are better in Thailand. I just think that the Social Security and the school funding, those two issues, are so much better in the U.S. that it kind of outweighs the other factors. But there are definitely some good factors in Thailand. Like I mentioned, the military and pharmaceutical and energy prices, and with the CEOs taking all that money, you should be able to keep more of your money in America. Now, the pharmaceutical and energy companies taking that money, that doesn't affect your taxes, but the military does. So the taxes should be lower in America. Taxes are lower here in Thailand, so that's a benefit for Thailand. So there's definitely plenty of issues in which Thailand is better. So some of you may say, well, gee, after listening to this list, I prefer the Thailand system. That's fine. That's fine. I just think for my liking, and maybe it's because I've moved here to Thailand, so now where the cost of living is lower. So I use my Social Security from the U.S. to when I'm going to retire, I will stay here in Thailand. So I'm going to use it to retire here in Thailand. That money's pretty good. Like I said, 55,000 baht, and that's the low end estimate. That's per month that I get without doing any work. That's pretty nice. So for me, I prefer the American system. But if you disagree and you prefer the Thai system, that is perfectly reasonable. That's perfectly reasonable. My preference is the American system. But again, that's mostly just for two things, the Social Security and the school funding. A lot of these other things are either even or I prefer the Thai system. All right, so that's a look at the different government services between the differences between the United States and Thailand. All right, so thank you for joining us for today's episode of An American in Thailand. Any young people out there who are planning on heading off to university in the next year or so, please consider our university here, Ratchamakan, University of Technology, Peranakan. All right, stay with us and tune back in next week for another interesting episode. Also, don't forget to subscribe to our channel. Thank you.